You're not going to ask questions?
No.
Oh, I get to be on. But first of all, thank you very much. The last time we played at the Sheldon was about a year and a half ago. We came up here to the opening of an exhibit, and I made the comment to Paul, well, I take pictures too, and so does my mama. And we would love to have an exhibit here sometime. So for the past few months, Paul and Olivia and her team have been coming in and out of Hendersonville to our warehouse and working on this exhibit, and it is really beautiful. And my concept was to combine photography, historical treasures that belong to country music artists, and folk art, because most of country music people could be, I think, described as, you know, folk heroes. I gotta get where I can see it. And so I think when you look at a folk art painting, perhaps of Porter Wagner, and then look at his costumes and a photograph and his guitar, it all works together as an American treasure. And the same for the Johnny Cash pieces out here, the same for the Patsy Cline pieces, the same for, who else do we have here? Porter, Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, oh that guy. And there's an artifact in the Patsy Cline case that kind of set me in motion to start preserving this end of American history, this part of the culture. Because in the early 1980s, there was a shift in Nashville. Sonically, the sound of country music was changing. Visually, the old rhinestone suits were no longer acceptable, kind of deemed kind of embarrassing, really. And character guitars like Porter Wagner with his strap. Urban Cowboy came through and just kind of changed the course of country music's history and destiny. So all of a sudden it was about younger artists. It was about, you know, a more urban sound that was not so much a reflection of farms and fields and, you know, hard work and that kind of thing. So that was hard on me because I was a part of that time when I was trying to get a record deal myself. Due to a look of the sound, we played to that. But my heart is still with the old world of country music because those folks were the masters, and Lester Flack gave me a job when I was 13. So to see the old guys kind of disregarded and their things put out to pasture just didn't quite work for me. Kind of losing the family jewels. But the piece in the Patsy Cline case, the first piece that really set me on the course to do missionary work, if you will, to preserve these things, was there's a train case, a hand-tooled train case. And I noticed it when I walked up to it in a thrift store in Nashville. It said Patsy Cline. I put a blanket over it and her address was in it, so I called her husband, Charlie Dick. I said, where did you guys live in Madison, Tennessee? Oh, I don't know, Hillhurst, Hillcrest. I went, thank you. That's what was in there. And I asked the lady at the counter, I said, what do you need for this? She said, $75.
Oh my God.
So that tells you what was happening in Nashville at the time. The costumes were going to thrift stores. They were going to the back of closets. Mama worked at a bank, and the first set of costumes I ever bought was a Porter Wagner band member was selling off band uniforms, nudie suits, for $200 a piece. And I had Mama loan me $1,200 at the bank. And that started. So it started in my warehouse and then my bedroom at her house. And then it grew to a little bit bigger place, a little bit bigger place. And now there's like 20,000 items of this culture, probably their largest private collection in the world. And a big church building. I'll say this and then we'll talk about photography. There was a time, this exhibit tonight and our very presence at the Sheldon, Olivia, helps validate the mission me and my superlatives have been on for a long time. I believe that the culture of country music, traditional country music, is to be regarded in the pantheon of the arts as well as jazz, classical, ballet, those kind of things. And the fact that country music is in this house, there was a time country music would not have been known about here or accepted here except within a core group. The same with photography. There was a time photography was not considered a fine art. And so it is a personal victory tonight to be at the Sheldon once again, and I thank you for coming very much. My mama. I'm a card-carrying mama's boy, and you would be too if she was here. Hilda, Relena, and Connie came up from Nashville today. The photographs you see on the wall, is that me? I hope not. Oh, it's not me for once, okay. The photographs you see on the wall, photography and music, both were just things that were part of the life at our house growing up in Mississippi. But we would have gatherings in our living room to play country music kind of on Saturday night. And sometimes after church, gospel music would occur, gospel singings around the piano at our house. The thing that was always present was the coffee pot, good fellowship, and Mama had her camera. And so her love of photography, as you can see on the wall on this side, from her early works in early rural Mississippi, they really speak to me as great documents from a time and a place that sometimes in my mind it still exists, but in a lot of people's mind it does no longer exist. But it was about family. It was about the land. It was about the people of the land. And just those treasured moments. And I'm telling you, I have an opinion. She has the most impeccable mama timing I've ever seen. And did you ever see that movie Tin Cup where Kevin Costner was so good? He could just hit the ball with anything and it'd go in the hole. It didn't matter what kind of camera she shot with, it was always the same. It was a masterpiece. Mama, how did you first fall in love with photography?
Well, I looked at the Life magazine at my granddaddy's and saw pictures, and I thought, boy, that's neat. And I saw a few pictures that people had around. I wondered why they didn't have more. And I just thought I'd like to do that.
I've heard you tell this story before. I'm going to say there's somebody I always ask, the one that got away, the picture that got away. I want you to tell about Granny Darby being baptized.
Okay.
The one she didn't.
My grandmother and granddaddy were getting up in age, and she had belonged to the Methodist church, and he had not been baptized. So they talked it over, and they decided they wanted to be baptized in the church that we went to, the Baptist church. Well, we didn't have the baptistry, but we did have a creek that ran down there with a sandbar on it. So they came down, and we went. Everybody got on the bank, and I didn't have a camera at that time, and they were leading my grandmother out in the water to be baptized, and she was a real pretty little lady, and her hair was down, had on a white dress, I remember. And all of a sudden, there was a cloud came over, and I said, oh no. But just as they got her out in the water, and the preacher put his hand up to say the prayer, the sun came through, and it was like a spotlight on her head. So that set me on fire, that I needed a camera for special moments like that.
And you missed it.
But there's one on the wall here of my cousin that was getting baptized that I did not miss.
It's right over there. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The one I missed, we were in Austin, Texas, playing Willie Nelson's 60th anniversary, or 60th birthday. It was called the Big 6-0. And it was one of those Don Was productions where everybody was mix and match, and sometimes you were in the band, sometimes you were singing up front, sometimes you were singing harmony. It was a wonderful day. But Bob Dylan was on the show, and Bob and Willie were rehearsing Poncho and Lefty, that song that he and Merle did. And Willie's little boy named Lucas, he was about, 3 feet tall at the time. He had on a big hat, he had on cowboy boots with his pants stuck down. He was playing the harmonica, holding on to his daddy's leg while we were rehearsing, and I missed it. I get asked this a lot of times, and I'd be interested in your opinion on this. They wonder about the arts, the art of creativity, if you will. They ask me, how does music affect photography? Does your photography affect your music, and vice versa? My answer always is it's all the same thing.
It's all together because we always like music. We like gospel music. We like country music in our house, and there was just always music of some kind. And then when Marty got really interested in it, well, that gave me a little more power to keep the camera going.
Our uncle, George Day, had a beautiful portrait studio in Philadelphia, Mississippi, and it was world class. Remember when they would hand color your portraits and send it back to you? They were beautiful. We staged an exhibit, a George Day exhibit in my hometown a few years ago, and it was amazing, the people that brought their family photos and how wonderful they stood the test of time. But George always shot a large format camera, and primarily black and white like this. When did color come across your path, and when did that pique your interest?
Color was in, well, it was in that's a hard question. I can't remember right off when I started with color, but it was after 1952.
Yeah. Well, when me and Jennifer came along, I noticed that there was a lot more color photography.
Yeah.
For instance, that beautiful form on that diving board. That was our only vacation we ever took. Panama City.
We had to go to music festivals after that.
That's right.
Have time to go on vacation.
I remember Daddy bought a 1967 Volkswagen, right, Mom, for that trip with factory air. That was the coldest car I've ever been in my life. We went from Philadelphia, Mississippi to Panama City to Gulfport, Mississippi and back, and the gas bill was $21 for that. And I would suggest this to you, and Connie, I hope you never use this against me because you certainly can. Ladies, there's more ways to get back at your husband than one. Sometimes you don't have to say a word. You can put his picture on the wall with his bird legs. But the thing I notice about photography now, and probably everybody in this room shoots, everybody shoots pictures now. It was at one time it was just such a specialized thing, but everybody shoots pictures now. The concerts are like this anymore, more so than this. But do you still love to take pictures, Mama?
I do. I took some last week. Find the right bird and the right cat. The right kid on the street, you just got to take one.
Yeah.
It's kind of in your system, you know, you got to do it. But color, what you're talking about the color, that really came along when you started in the music business. The other, like, you know, Zelma and Reunion was 19, the black and white over there was 1958, I think.
Our next door neighbors in Choctaw Gardens, which is the title of Mama's book, was Welch and Velma Moore. And Welch, that fellow that's sitting there with the bird on his head, he bought me my first guitar, which is that yellow guitar, which is on display right there. And what's the story of that photograph of Welch and the bird on his head? Me looking at it.
We lived next door to them while we were having a house built, and we didn't want to move. We enjoyed them so much, and they adopted Marty and Jennifer as their grandchildren. And every day when they came home from work, Marty wanted to go over there because they named him Precious and brought him candy. And they wanted him to come, so they had a bird that flew around in the house, Chi-Chi. And at first Marty was a little bit leery of the bird going around. They turned him loose and didn't open the door. And I spent probably 2 or 3 weeks, not every day, but the days I could go, when the bird was flying around, I knew that he was landing on Welch's head, and Marty had this awful look like he was going to get me for sure. But I worked real hard to get that picture. So while we were over there, Velma played the piano, and you see Marty playing the piano with her singing away, so that was a good time.
Well, and that's a good point too. Sometimes, and this is hard on me because I like to hit and run with my camera, but sometimes you have to stay with it to get the shot you want. And there's a friend of mine named Jim McGuire who took the ultimate photograph of the Ryman Auditorium with lightning striking across the top of it. Google him, you'll see that photograph. But he worked on that shot, he worked on getting that shot for like 6 months. Every time he'd go to sleep at night and a storm would come up, he'd get in his car and go downtown to Nashville and hopefully get that shot he had in his mind. So if it don't come through the first time, hit it again. You just have to, and then you'll find the shot. One of the statements that I heard concerning photography, and I think you can apply this to any part of your life. Well, there was an award given to me for some photography award, photographer after photographer that was honored that night, most of them started out by talking about, when I started photography, I did this to make a living. I shot fashion, or I shot, landscape, or I shot this or that just to make a living or to get by. But the ultimate statement of the night was, but when I started shooting my true heart, when I started shooting what I really believed in and really loved, it all came together. And I think whether you're playing music or whatever point that you're in your life, if you start shooting with your real heart, the real picture appears. And there's a great lesson in that. There's a great lesson in that. So shoot with your heart. The Lakota Sioux Project? There's some works here from a study we're working on called Badlands. In Philadelphia, Mississippi, it was the home of the Choctaw Nation, Mississippi Band of Choctaws. And so Native American people have always been a part of our lives, right? They were beautiful. They used to come into Philadelphia in the early 60s, still in full costume, to do chores and, go to the general stores on the weekends. But in the early 1980s, I was in Johnny Cash's band, and we went to Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And he had a heart for the Native American people, and I said, why are we here? Because it was pretty godforsaken. He said, we're here because it's the poorest county in the United States of America. And these people need our love and our support and our hope and our help. And I said, good enough for me. So I fell in love with the people that night. This is in the early 1980s. And I've never quit going back. I've been shooting out there for years. Connie and I were actually married on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And what was it? The guy said, we went up there, we thought we could avoid the press and be married quietly. Somebody said, they were asking, where's Marty and Connie? And one of the native guys said, they went that away. That's good. But I've never seen as much dignity and integrity and just deep heart as that you'll find this very minute on Pine Ridge, and it's still the poorest county in the United States of America. But if you go out there, you'll find a piece of yourself as an American citizen that you probably didn't even know existed, and it'll touch your heart. So I hope you enjoy the works of all. A lot of those people now are gone over the past 10 years, but we keep going back and shooting. What do you think?
Talk a little about the studio, the shots for the backgrounds, and how you got those, and what you.
The most important, one more thing than yours. The most important picture to me, talking about shooting with your heart, is right back there in the corner. There's a pretty girl in a blue dress, and that's that lady right there, Connie. And that's the night I met and fell in love with Connie. She came to Philadelphia to sing at the Choctaw Fair. I got her autograph. I got her my picture made of me and Jennifer. Mama made that photograph. And then I declared on the way home I was going to marry her. There's Connie. What was it you said about Connie? About her bringing her home?
Oh, she had a time that she took off with her kids that she didn't record as much, and I thought I needed some more Connie recordings. I kept bugging Marty to make me some off of every copy so I'd have in a compact deal. Instead of that, he just went and got Connie, and she said,
Well, I wanted you to maybe talk a little bit about some of the portraits and what you did to get them, and some of the circumstances surrounding some of the portraits in the exhibit.
One of the photographers that had a lasting effect on me was the work of Edward S. Curtis in his Native American studies. In the early part of the 20th century, he went to work out of his studio in Seattle, and then his heart took over, and he basically dedicated his entire life to documenting what was left of the 19th century Native American. And so the more I looked at his work, I have one of his works of Geronimo on our wall in our dining room. And the more I looked at that photograph of Geronimo and the one that you see as you walk in of Johnny Cash, there's really no difference. And again, the disappearing culture of country music, the vanishing of traditional country music, and its people, and its inventors, and its architects seem to be getting away. So I went after a book called, and I did a book called Country Music: The Masters. And knowing that it was a whole lot easier to go to them than it was to have them come to me, I went to Hobby Lobby and got 3 sheets of black velvet and had them sewn together. So I had a portable studio that I carried in a duffel bag, and I went all over, especially Nashville, but all over the country, photographing these guys, and it was a common background. It was a simple way to do it, but it had a profound effect. One of George Jones out there, I noticed, is really pretty. And again, the photography is so easy and so accessible these days. Just start shooting. Just start shooting. No. Any questions?
How do you keep track of stuff? Once you have a lot of pictures that are still on the roll.
How do you keep track of stuff? You have a lot of pictures still on the roll? Hire Maria Elena. Maria Elena kind of brought my life to order, and it became a bit like a library. When I would shoot a roll of film, I would hand it to her to send to be developed. By the way, I still shoot film. I'm a dinosaur. I'm proud of it. And I love digital photography, but I love the feeling, the warmth of this. So I give her the roll of film. We have it developed in North Carolina. It comes home, I fill out what the contact sheet is and mark the negatives that we're going to use. And she has a filing system for it. So, you know, it can start in the bottom drawer of the house. Just archive it, get it together.
Where do you find time for all this? With the show and everything?
Where do I find time?
Yeah, it's just wonderful how you keep the arts going. I appreciate it. Thank you for that. But how do you find the time to do it?
I don't know. I'm busy. Creativity is a hard thing to keep up with. And so, but the beauty of it is I love every aspect of it, so it makes it easy. Thanks for caring. Yes, sir.
Do you have any Jimmy Rogers memorabilia that you didn't bring with you?
I do. The one thing that I'm missing in my collection, in that 20,000 piece collection, there is a void that I have been chasing for years. That is Jimmy Rogers' autograph. I've come close a time or two. A guy called me recently and said, I have some Jimmy Rogers letters. I said, I'll be right there. So he came in from Texas, and I went out there and I couldn't wait to see them, and they were Xerox. A couple things of interest. Hank Snow called me one day and invited me to his ranch, or his little ranch house in Madison, Tennessee. This is in the early 90s, and I think he saw something in me perhaps that he wanted to pass along. So he gave me one of his nudie suits, and he was a deep, deep Jimmy Rogers lover. And he gave me one of Jimmy Rogers' railroad lanterns that we use from time to time.
Do you have a leather?
That's the other thing. It's a satchel. It's a Jimmy Rogers, for you who don't know, was the father of country music. He was the man that was the first country music superstar. His songs gave us the entire blueprint of country music. And so he died in New York City at a recording session. He was like 29 or 30 years old, I think, somewhere in there.
34.
34? Thank you very much. They have better wine over there. And they put his body on a train in New York City, and it traveled from New York City back to Meridian, Mississippi. And the newspaper account read that not since the death of President Abraham Lincoln have so many well-wishers, mourners, and friends lined the track to shed tears, throw flowers, and say farewell to a national hero. And this briefcase you're speaking of, 1,000 miles of people, this briefcase was in the casket with him, and had his songs in it from the session. And Mrs. Rogers bequeathed it to their daughter Anita. Anita Rogers gave it to Johnny Cash, and Johnny Cash gave it to me. So that's how it worked out. That's a pretty cool piece.
I have one for your mother. I'm envious you still have your mom. How hard of a decision was it for you to let Marty go out as a young, he was 14 years removed? How difficult was that to let him go? I mean, just, you know, it had to be a hard decision, wasn't it?
It really was a hard decision, and then it wasn't a hard decision because he was just so into music. And the doors opened, and it happened to be the right people. I couldn't have let him just gone, but I knew after talking to Lester and Rowan White that he would be taken care of, and he was.
Marty, I have one for you. I mean, I can see those guitars you play. I've never really played a pre-CDS Fender. What's the difference between those old Fenders and the ones they make today?
What's the difference in the old Fenders and the new
Like
Fenders?
as far as, the way they play it in the sound. I never played an old one. Like
About $25,000. I think difference in the fiddle and the violin. Those vintage guitars were Leo Fender's original vision, in my opinion. It's before he had it totally figured out, but whether he knew it or not, he had it figured out. The wood is so seasoned and so dry and so steady. They resonate. And the lacquer was thinner. Nowadays there's a lot of lacquer on guitars, and the wood's green, and they're replicas of the pickups. And if you know anything about the old Fenders, every pickup has an initial on who wound the pickups inside the factory. I think there was a lady named Rose. I think if you found a pickup that Rose wound, she just had something in her bones that gave you a special touch. But they are really, really, really magical guitars. They truly are. I urge you to get one. Sell all your dues and get one old one. They're great.
I had the pleasure of seeing your exhibit in Nashville, and what struck me out of all of your pieces that you had exhibited there was the letter to Johnny Cash from the head of the KKK. And my question is, how do you decide which pieces, out of everything you have, you're going to exhibit each showing?
She's mentioning a letter that I have in my collection, that Johnny Cash had Charlie Pride on his ABC weekly television show back in the 70s. Hey Olivia, turn down the volume over there. And the Ku Klux Klan came after Johnny Cash, wrote a horrible letter. I mean, a very derogatory letter. And instead of sticking it in a drawer, he had it framed and put on his wall as an act of defiance, I think. And he gave it to me. But that's strong medicine. There's some language in there that I don't think a lot of institutions would probably want on their walls. Another prime example of that's a hard call is the first time I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there was a piece of Otis Redding's Airplane. And I asked the curator, I said, how does that play with the public? He says, it's 50-50. Some people love it, some people are appalled by it. It brings people to sadness. I had the same offer to have a piece of the Patsy Cline Airplane. And we almost put it in the exhibit in Nashville, but we thought there's too many people alive and family members that are alive, when they walk upon it, it's like walking up on the tragedy again. So I think it's a personal call, but I think when you're in doubt, leave it out.
Another question. Next time you play the Sheldon, could you leave the rain at home?
Oh, I know it. It rains every time we play here. It's Connie's fault, isn't it?
I don't know, it was here before they got here.
This time it was. This time it came here yesterday.
I have a tribute to a lasting friendship. Mom, introduce our friends over here.
Oh.
Your Army buddies.
Right. We have some friends in 1952, my husband and this young man right here, Stokes Robinson. Stand up, Stokes. They were in the Army together. His wife Marge and his daughters were with him, and we didn't hear from them for a long time, lost contact, and we finally got in contact with Stokes and another Army buddy that had moved to Alabama, and they've been coming down for the last 4 or 5 years, and we've all got to know each other again, and we're just really proud of it.
What else you got? Yes, sir.
I can't think of one person that has done more to preserve traditional country music. We enjoy your show all the summer.
Thank you.
And for a person like you that is hip and understands all genres of music, it's just, we cut our teeth on that when we were kids too. And this is the 50th year we started playing guitar together. We watched your show and just loved it.
Thank you.
And now the cable has moved up. What drives you? What's your drive to preserve tradition?
What's my drive to preserve traditional country music? Following my heart. My heart appeared. I had explored every avenue of country music you could possibly think of. from the time I went on the air when I was 12. And one day I woke up, I was actually driving through the back roads of Missouri. And I had been scoring a film at the time called All the Pretty Horses for Billy Bob Thornton. And what I learned about scoring film is if the scene and the music flow, the scene flies by. But if the music is wrong, a 30-second scene can feel like 5 hours. Until the music is right, it doesn't happen. So I was driving through the back roads of Missouri one day, really coming to a crossroad in lots of ways in my life. But I was looking at clothes blowing on the line. I was looking at cows and farms and the beautiful landscapes. And I was listening to contemporary country music, and I go, that does not work. And then I plugged in a Hank Williams record. And then I plugged in a Charlie Pride record. And then I started to cry. And then I listened to Connie Smith and Tammy Wynette. I listened all the way over here. And by the time I was home, I went, I know where I'm going. I don't know how to get there again because I felt like I was in the weeds and miles away. But I knew that I had to get back to that because that's the culture that I believe in. And I believe that traditional country music has such a deep root system. It is the empowering force that lets any trend or denomination of country music go on top of it. But the stuff we're sitting in the middle of today, that's the treasure.
That's it.
That's the archives. That's the heart of it. That's the heart. Connie calls it the cry of the heart. And that's what it is. And I thank you for listening. Hi.
Do you do any digital photography?
Do I do any digital photography?
And can you talk a little bit about, if not, why not, or the differences you find in shooting film and digital?
Don't you know how to work, have to know how to work a computer to do digital photography? I think digital photography is absolutely wonderful. I love the fact that it is so clean and you can blow it up to the size of the building and it's fast, you can go around the world in no time. But that speaks to me in a different way. And I wish that I knew how to work a computer. Someday it's on my bucket list. That and playing the steel guitar, I'm gonna learn more. But I think it's a beautiful art. It is.
What does Hilda shoot with? What do you photograph with?
What's your camera now, Mom?
Well, I'm still in the film. I have a digital camera that I can use some, but I still like film. And I've noticed that I have to pay a lot more for it now.
And there's the bottom line. Do you shoot film?
Not anymore.
Why?
It's hard to get it developed.
There's a
And
place
it's hard
in-
to buy them. There's one or two places in St. Louis that'll still put on film, but most of it you have to send away.
Right, we do too. We do too. Hi, please.
Hilda, did you shoot with a medium format camera? Can I please color images?
Did you shoot with a medium format camera? What kind of camera did you use?
I used an Ansco,
Any questions about any of the shots on the wall?
That's like my first
Well, that's good. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if Hilda, when you made those pictures with your Ansco 120, were you using slide transparency film or were you using negative color film?
I used negatives on those, but I know what you're talking about with the slides. I did some of those. We have them, but there was another film that came out then that Ansco had in the slides that was a different type thing, and I liked it. And it had a deeper color to it, but I kind of like this because it was black.
They're so vivid and they're so warm.
Yeah.
And I just love them. They're beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Well, we'll take this time now. If anyone has any things to sign, Marty will be in the gift shop. That's probably the best place, and Hilda. And if you want some books signed, I think you've got till 7, and then Marty will be available after the concert as well.
All right.